I meant to post this video a lot sooner, but I got so into this game that I did not want to do anything else. I have been a fan of Zelda since the N64, so no, I am not reviewing this game because everybody and their mother is talking about it right now. But how does it compare to Breath of the Wild? Is this game a 10 out of 10 like everybody says it is? What makes it so good? What flaws does it have? Well, let's find out. By the way, if you have not played this game yet, I am spoiling this game rotten, but if you've played, I don't know, 70 plus hours, don't care, or just along for the ride, I think you're in the clear, but if not, I'll be here when you get back. I'm doing this review a little different than normal. I'm pretty thorough and like to be specific in my reviews, but as of the time of this video upload, I am fast approaching 100 hours and I feel like there is a lot more gameplay than that. The vast amount of content is great, but for a review, yeah, I'm not going to be able to talk about everything. So I'm just going to keep it simple here. My first 50 hours, of course, did consist of the intro, learning the mechanics, but my big focus was on the 4 regions. Thus, I will be moving from point A to point B pretty quickly. I boot up the game and immediately the first cutscene comes on. Zelda and Link travel underground through tunnels that are underneath Hyrule Castle. This is a sequel to Breath of the Wild, and as you can see, Link has the Master Sword and full hearts right here. Full energy also. They both discover that there was an ancient civilization and race called the Zonai. I was immediately interested in this as this was a brand new race not seen in the Zelda franchise before, minus a reference or two in Breath of the Wild, but more on them later. They come across the source of the darkness, which is a mummy that awakens and the stuff called gloom comes out and drains Link of all his hearts and energy, something that is no stranger to Metroid fans. The Master Sword breaks, but one piece scratches the mummy. This bit is important because the Master Sword is kryptonite to those who are evil. I really like this short bit of storytelling. Then Hyrule Castle raises up to the sky and a short bit later Link wakes up in a different location entirely, all with a brand new arm. He walks out of the cave to realize he is now in some islands in the sky. Link comes across Rauru, no not him, in spirit form. By the way, it cracks me up how Rauru very tactfully said Link's arm had to be cut off or he'll die by saying I had to replace it, and put his own right arm in. After Rauru talked for a bit, this is when you, the player, will travel to your first shrine, which are mini dungeons or temples that have you solve short puzzles. In the first shrine, you get the Ultra Hand ability from Rauru, which allows you to move objects around and even attach them to other objects. Like these planks here, it allows me to make a bridge to get across gaps. You will also use this mechanic to make vehicles. Once you are done with a shrine, you would then use this mechanic to get to your next shrine. You would then get the Fuse ability. Fuse allows you to attach objects to your weapons or shields. Attaching a boulder to a stick here, for example, will create something strong enough to break down stone walls. You can also attach a fire fruit to an arrow to get fire arrows. I definitely fuse horns off of enemies to my weapons a lot as it raises weapon stats. Gotta say, with all these tools and resources you'll come across playing this game, there's definitely a lot of thinking outside the box. I then went to the next shrine, which gives me this rise ability that lets me go through ceilings and come out the other side. Then sometime later I got this recall ability, which allows me to take an object and rewind its motion in time. For example, this gear in the Temple of Time will make it turn the other direction, creating a platform to allow me to get to the next room. I did use this a lot when I accidentally caused something to fall into a bottomless pit when I did not mean to. to. And I used this to get back to the sky by rewinding objects that fell from it. Although I did stop using recall this way eventually, as I had plenty of skip travel points in the sky and other means to travel among it. I forgot to mention, I used Rise a lot to get out of caves quicker, reach higher elevations and whatnot. The tutorial is now complete, and also this game uses Breath of the Wild as a base, so I'm going to assume you've played it and know how that game works. Therefore, I'll keep what Breath of the Wild established to a minimum, and make talking about key things that set Tears of the Kingdom apart from its predecessor a priority. And thus, you dive off from the island in the sky, and it sure is a long way down, but then you get reminded of the vast world that you will soon get to explore. I very vaguely remember bits and pieces of Breath of the Wild now that it's been a while since I've played it, but I do remember that the moment you start, it would quickly move you into the gameplay and then quickly into the open world, maybe within an hour if I remember correctly. I counted in the footage of my playthrough that this intro and tutorial is about 4 hours before you get into the open world as opposed to Breath of the Wild. I am well aware of that speedrunner that beat the game in 90 minutes, but I am not a speedrunner. But your main goal is basically to find Zelda. There's more to the story than that, but I'll save it for part 2 and talk about the 4 regions and their dungeons. Shura here pointed me to Rito Village as there has been a sighting of Princess Zelda. By this point, I have noticed that this game gives more direction on what to do than Breath of the Wild, but this is still open world, so I decided to do Zora'S Domain first. The Zoras are my favorite Zelda race, and every time I play Majora's Mask, I always get excited when I get to play Zora Link, minus the 3D remake. Yes, I am somebody who likes the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time. Yes, I like the Lake Bed Temple in Majora's Mask, and I really liked all the shades of blue in Zora's Domain on Breath of the Wild. Zora's Domain has been dirtied, and according to the king, it was Zelda that brought a sludge monster. You would meet with Sidon, the Zora Prince, who was in the last game, but I only remember him for that. But he is not as much of a one-note character in this game. He does accompany you in this game, and he comes with this ability that would give you this shield. It's basically Daruk's protection, only if you swing your sword, it'll fire a short blade beam. Pre-Breath of the Wild Zelda games would give you an item to progress, but here they are replaced with character abilities like this one. I'm not a fan of having to go up and talk to the character to activate the ability though. I wish it was mapped to a button like down on the D-pad, which is used as just a horse whistle, and I did not mess with horses that much in this game. I would have liked it if I could hold down on the D-pad, select the character ability, and also just tap to activate it. I'm also not a fan of how opening the map can be mapped to the L button when you can simply just push the minus button on the controller. The L button is basically what Ultra Hand and Fuse are used for and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, this game overall has good controls. Those things are just minor gripes I have. I think the map should just be mapped to the minus button and have some other L button ability instead. And well, having to talk to the character for their abilities has never really led me to any frustrating deaths or moments, so it's not worth drawing that much attention to. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, let's go ahead and fast forward to talk about the Water Temple. The Water Temple is in the sky, and there are anti-gravity mechanics that makes Link's jump higher and more floaty. This temple of course has water-based puzzles. One of my issues with Breath of the Wild was the Divine Beasts all shared aesthetics too similar to the point where I'm not able to distinguish them apart looking back. Here, seeing as how this is my first dungeon, I held off on being impressed until I did another temple, as my thought process was all of these could be temples in the sky. I get to the dungeon boss and oh, it's not a form of Calamity Ganon like all the bosses were in the previous game. This definitely showed promise for what I could later experience. Muktarok was a pretty good boss fight, although he does cover a lot of the floor with sludge later in the boss fight that would slow Link's movements. And well, it could have bothered me to talk to Sidon to get a water-based attack, but the anti-gravity movement of the dungeon made it easier, but I'm also well aware of the Splash Fruit arrow fusion. After that, Sidon becomes king and his fiancée will be queen. I may have remembered Sidon for only one thing in the previous game, but I like how he's more fleshed out here. Then I went to the Gerudo Desert, which is having issues with sandstorms and Gibdos, zombies and Zelda basically. Gerudo Town is a female exclusive town as well. The Gerudo are all women basically. They are not sexist. There is a man born every 100 years and he's to be the chief, but you know, Ganondorf is the one Gerudo male, and seeing as how he's the main villain of the franchise, yeah, that would tarnish a tribe's reputation. However, if you impress them and prove yourself as a warrior, so to speak, man or woman, they include you. I bring this up because I find it so funny that you have to sneak into their shelter without consent and they take up arms against you, but then the captain of the guard remembers you from the previous game and is well aware that you're searching for Princess Zelda. I also find it really funny that now that you're allowed to be there, some of them get real nervous to talk to you as they're not used to talking to men, and there's even a class for the Gerudo on how to talk to men. Despite the female-only culture, some actually travel to find boyfriends. It's the little things here that made me spend quite a bit of time here. Fast forward to the temple of this region, you are accompanied by the chief Riju, who I cannot recall in the slightest from the last game, but I sure am going to remember her from this game. I liked having this character around because she has respect for Link and is willing to let you roam the female exclusive town despite some people in the race feeling awkward about it. Her ability to do massive lightning damage when you shoot an arrow is my favorite character ability in this game. I got to the lightning temple and yep, it's on land, not outdoors, pretty linear for part of it, and then stacked with floors. It really distinguishes itself from the previous temple that I did, so this kept me interested in seeing what the other dungeons are like. It's here where I could fuse mirrors with shields, making mirror shields that light reflects off of. Those were moments that brought a smile to my face as it took me back to previous games that had this shield. I then went to Death Mountain where the Gorons are, and they are not in the right state of mind. I only remember Yunobo for that oh man cutscene in the previous game, but he accompanies you and would ram into stuff with his rolling ability. This ability works as a cannonball when you are piloting vehicles, and I found it so cool to dive in the volcano and eventually get to the underground fire temple. The map does make my head hurt looking at it, but I think this is one of my favorite dungeons in the game, and I normally do not have that opinion about fire temples in Zelda games. It makes good use of vehicles with the minecarts. I don't dislike fire temples, they are just normally not my favorite. Once this temple was finished and the Gorons are back in the right state of mind, I went to Rito Village in the mountains, which was having a massive blizzard in the area. I met with Tulin, who seems to remember me, but I sure don't remember him. Are you seeing a pattern I have with some of these characters? I start out either not remembering them or remembering them for one thing, as they were so one note in Breath of the Wild apparently, but I would say their ancestors, who are the 4 champions 100 years prior, had more of a focus placed on them in that game. Given a little character development and some time to work with them on their problems made them grow on me. It is little things like that, you know? Tulin's ability is to give you more horizontal distance when floating in the air. Riju's ability may be my favorite, but I would definitely say this ability is the most useful. The temple here is an airship with no anti-gravity mechanics, and the sky is blocked because of the blizzard. It's another sky temple, sure, but it did a good job distinguishing itself from the water temple. But I gotta say, the Colgera boss fight is my favorite in the game. It is such a fun boss with epic music. You're in the air for almost all of it, and you target its weak point by either down thrusting or using the slow down time mechanic to shoot arrows at its weak point. I mean, there is a reason why I did not say this fight was perfect, as it looked like I died because of a glitch here. Yeah, that moment was frustrating, but I still think this boss is a 10 out of 10. I gotta say, these dungeons are a massive improvement over Breath of the Wild. Once forgettable characters are now made memorable. Once you beat their respective dungeons, they stick around in the form of stands. Yeah, I had to make a JoJo reference. Allowing you to still use their abilities and even help you out during fights. But I am not done with this review yet, as I got a whole nother second part to work on. This is only part 1 of this review, but I will say this. This game is better than Breath of the Wild. I like that it has more focus on a story, and the dungeons are really good. There's still plenty of content to talk about, so I will continue to talk in part 2 of this review. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Have a blessed night, and take care.